Welcome to Postmodern World, where questions are more important than answers, and the trip itself is the beginning, middle, and end game. What, you didn't know we're in Postmodern World? Well, I guess I'm not totally surprised. The transition from modern world can be jarring, like the transition from gas to electricity, or the horse and buggy to cars. Paradigm shifts are difficult, and we're in the midst of a whopper, the transition from the modern to the postmodern era. When the automobile was first introduced, all sorts of laws were passed to figure out how to accommodate these noisy, smelling machines on roads still traversed mainly by horses and pedestrians. Many municipalities passed laws requiring a person carrying a bright red triangular flag to walk 60 yards in front of every car. The idea, I guess, being that it would give the unmechanized a chance to get out of the way. Well, this reached its ultimate level of absurdity in 1896 with a Pennsylvania law that required all drivers, and I'm quoting from the law, upon chance encounters with cattle or livestock to immediately stop the vehicle, immediately and as rapidly as possible disassemble the automobile, and then conceal all the various components out of sight behind like nearby bushes until the equestrian or the livestock was sufficiently pacified. The old ways die hard. Humans, especially those in entrenched industries, don't handle paradigm shifts particularly well. It's unfortunate because we're in the midst of a harrowing and challenging transition from the modern to the postmodern era, and it's going about as well as the transition from horses to cars. The problem is that most people, especially those in charge of enormous organizations like governments and corporations, still think like it's the modern era, or worse, specifically the late 20th century. I think that they've failed to realize the sea change in thinking that is postmodernism. Nor is anyone stopping to consider the sheer number of postmodern people on the planet right now. Counting forward from the 1960s, by the way, these numbers are off a little bit, but counting forward from the 1960s, we now have 7 generations of thoroughly postmodern people on Earth. And those born most recently are reminding us old-time Gen Xers that the power has shifted our direction. There are now more postmodern thinkers on the planet than not. Our institutions, especially Christian churches, need to learn how to communicate with us. As I mentioned, I'm a Gen Xer. We were the first postmodern generation born after 1961 into a tumultuous, war-torn, racist, sexist, xenophobic, corporate overlord world created almost exclusively by and for white Christian men. Gen Xers are children of the 1960s counterculture. We're wildly individual, but there are some commonalities. We're voracious learners who grew up on things like Kurt Vonnegut in 2001: A Space Odyssey and Sesame Street. We're wary of institutions because of the way that they treated our parents and because of what we could plainly see every night on television: the Vietnam War, the Pentagon Papers, and the assassinations of Dr. King, Malcolm X, and the Kennedys. Anyone who grew up watching all that stuff play out on live TV is either wary of or downright rebellious against the modern age's centralized narratives, whether from a corporation, the government, religion, or science. We're lifelong learners, slightly addicted to research. And our kids, as we say in Brooklyn, forget about it. One of my favorite books written as we were coming of age and entering the workforce is Douglas Coulin's Microserfs. The title says it all. I'm not your serf. I'm a valuable part of your company. Treat me as such, or I won't work here anymore. We're seeing the fruits of that thinking now with widespread labor strikes against Amazon, Google, Apple, and more. It's a groundswell. Generations of postmodern people done being squashed by the limited, closed-minded, prejudicial thinking of the modern era. Perhaps we're finally ready to organize, to change the world. The modern era produced the Renaissance, among other things, but 400 years of rapid, almost overwhelming scientific progress. During this long period of human exploration and expansion around the globe and into outer space, we discovered everything from gravity to gravitons. We brute forced rockets thrust against Newton's newly learned, or at least newly named, forces, exploring the edges of the solar system, then the universe, and beyond. Not too long ago, we turned our curiosity inward and discovered a new, fantastical quantum world, universes between the spaces, as complex and fascinating as deep space. All this searching and discovery led us to create some beneficial tech and medicines, but it's also caused us to fall into a very comfortable rut. The scientific process has so successfully led to the discovery of some of the mechanics of reality that we still can't shed the modern era mentality that science will eventually lead us to a universal, objective truth. An underlying narrative about reality that's true for all of us in every situation, the way most of us used to believe in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Postmodernists reject both concepts. The essential lesson, especially for religion, is that postmodernism rejects a central objective narrative. There is no universal truth, and the idea that there should be one is an empire's privileged, prejudiced attitude. There is no one-size-fits-all in postmodern world. No universal context, because we've learned how destructive it is to declare, my civilization is better than yours because you don't wear shoes or have money, and you don't know Jesus, so we have to convert you by force if necessary so you don't go to hell. Trust us, it's for your own good. I will not miss the modern era. In the past, God was this universal context. Everything was created by God or gods of some sort. In the modern era, and especially in the 20th century, science replaced religion as the resource that explained the nature of being. And most of us bought into the scientific worldview because, unlike the Bible or other holy scriptures, science told us it was using objective, undeniable, observable information. Science discovers facts, and facts are hard-edged and unforgiving until another scientist makes a discovery negating the previous fact. But that's also the beauty of science. It doesn't hold on to ideas long after they've been disproven. Religion? Not so much. Throughout the modern era, we were looking for facts and nothing but the facts. That attitude is inappropriate for the postmodern era, which rejects these overarching centralized narratives and the idea of objective truth because, for the big existential questions at least, we've accepted that reality is tenuous at best. Postmoderns need dialogue. I don't need finite answers. I need to discuss all the reasons there are no finite answers. That includes my ideas about God and spirituality. So, don't tell me you know I'm going to hell unless I pray to Jesus. Don't tell me Jesus is the only way. You know nothing of the sort. And I know a different Jesus. A very different Jesus, in part because I've studied him in his Jewish 1st century CE context. Like the rest of us, products of this world, Jesus was a product of his 1st century world. We need to understand his society 2,000 years removed. It takes a lot of work. But remember what I said about Gen Xers and postmoderns generally being lifelong learners? If you tell me something suspicious, I am going to look that up in so many sources. Our religious organizations would do well to comprehend postmodernism better. It forces a change in thinking and an acceptance of other belief systems. The postmodern mind cannot tolerate a Christianity that insists only Christians go to heaven or that only Jesus has a bead on spiritual enlightenment. In fact, we find that kind of thinking insulting and often racist. At the current, services include both Buddhist meditation and Christian centering prayer. We discuss the Jewish context of Jesus and the Bible. We read and listen to Jesus' prayers in Aramaic. We deconstruct Romanized Christianity. But most importantly, we have a discussion in the middle of service every Sunday. So whoever wants to comment and share can. This is no longer a preacher bellowing from the pulpit, I hope. It's a shared learning experience. It's communal. Postmodernism is the underlying reason people are leaving churches of all denominations in record numbers. More people today identify as spiritual but not religious than they do Protestant or Catholic. If churches, synagogues, and mosques want to maintain any sense of relevance, they need to postmodern up and stop claiming they know everything about everything. Stop pretending that the Bible and the Quran are the Word of God and somehow hold some sort of objective truth about life, death, and the restaurant at the end of the universe. It's time for an honest church where the people, including the leaders, admit that they have more questions than answers about how anything works, especially God. There's a new spirituality in town, folks. So don't be the guy with the little red flag holding up traffic. Get on the hydrogen-powered bus and take a spin into Postmodern World. I really think you'll like it. Our question to consider today is, what about your faith would you consider postmodern? I know it's a difficult word, but what about your faith would you consider postmodern? Let's go into breakout rooms for about 10 minutes.